Welcome back to Smoke Barbecue Source. I'm Ricer, and today I'm doing a rotisserie prime rib on the Weber Searwood. This summer, I already tested out how the Searwood would do. It turned out so great that I have to do it again. I have over 10 pounds of USDA Prime Rib. Now you can certainly do a choice cut or even a select, but today we're spoiling ourselves with a prime rib. So let's get this hunk of joy out of the cryovac, because there is going to be some prep needed to perform this task. Ooh, we got some bloodies all over our cutting board. It's okay, I've got paper towel. Oof, duh. The prep for this prime is this big chunk of fat on the outside. You can leave it on here if you prefer, but I'm gonna take it off. I usually make like beef tallow out of it. Now there is a nice little seam when you're trimming that you can follow. You don't have to get too fussy, but just run your knife right across it and that big old glob will come right off. Now this is really good meat, so you could go ahead and trim some of it off and use it for a great stir fry. But me, I'm gonna put it in the freezer and render it up later. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh what a relief it is. Now this outer cap of fat, I'm actually gonna leave a lot of that on today, and because of that big open chamber, I need a little bit more protection from that intense heat. Plus, as it's rendering, it actually starts kind of basting the prime as it's turning. Now, one thing about almost every single prime rib that you get from the store, it's gonna be a little longer on one side. I like to square them up, just makes it easier and a little better presentation. This is going to be tomorrow's breakfast. So off that 10.66 pounds of prime rib, I trimmed off 2.6 pounds. So that means I have an 8-pound prime rib. Now we get to the fun part. We've got to truss this prime rib up. I've learned several different ways how to do this. The easiest is where you take it and you wrap around 3 times and cinch it tight. Then tie it off and then repeat each step across the whole roast. But because I got into charcuterie, I had to learn how to do it more professionally and keep it more uniform and solid across the whole roast. So we take the string and go underneath the meat, and you can give yourself a little slack because you're going to need some of this at the end. And then we just bring this piece over to you. Pinch it off, and then you're going to go over and make a loop. And then back through. Here is our butcher slip knot, let's call it. And you want to try to get this kind of lined up in the center. So adjust your strings. If you take a little time in the beginning, it's just going to make it a little easier. Now after you kind of have it formed and tight, go ahead and put on a cinch knot. Now take your string, loop it over, and go back underneath. Again, take your time, get it kind of lined up the best that you can, and don't expect to be perfect at it right away. The main thing is that you're getting it tight. It's a good time to check the bottom too, to make sure that you're kind of going even. I kind of have to baby this string. It's not the best twine. Now we just keep repeating until we get all the way to the end. We're almost there. If that happens, or you break it, there's only one choice. You have to tie a knot in it. Don't worry, you don't have to start over. Just sucks. I got a little too aggressive with it. I hate when things advertise that it's butcher twine, but it really is just a craft store crap. So if you're gonna get anything that's called butcher twine, make sure that it's actually like coming from some type of butcher company instead of coming from Craftin' with Edith. Now when we get to this point, you're just gonna roll it over, take your string, and you wanna go a little bit past, give yourself room for error. It's better to have a little bit too much than not enough. So we're gonna go way out here and then cut it off. This part's really easy. Go underneath the string and then come back and over and then under again. Try to do it this way. Go underneath, back over, and underneath again. I'm gonna make a country song. Underneath, back over, and under again. Okay, maybe I won't make a famous country song, but get to this point, bring it all the way up to the top, and we're going to tighten these off. Put a couple knots in it. Why not one more? Just for good luck. There we go. It's all trussed up. I don't like this chunk of fat. It's pissing me off. As far as seasoning up your prime rib, we'll put a link in the description below for a homemade recipe that I used last year, and it is awesome. But for today's cook, I'm just using one of my favorite SPGs, so salt, pepper, and garlic. When it comes to seasoning up a prime rib, put as much on as you want. This is a huge chunk of meat. It can handle it. Rotator two. Tappity tappity, and watch out for this stuff because it will make you sneeze if you're not paying attention. Of course, get our ends done. I'm just gonna let this 8-pound prime rib set and sweat and start drawing in some of that salt for maybe 2-3 hours, and we'll get the Weber Searwood fired up. I'm gonna start this prime rib at 225 degrees today. And while that's firing up, we're gonna get this prime rib on a spit. The Weber Stealth is a tad hotter over on the right-hand side compared to the left. So I'm putting the thicker end of this prime over on the right-hand side also. We gotta find the center, and we just start shoving it through. And not too shabby. Get our claws way up on this side, and same with the claws on this side. Get them in, take a pliers and get this nice and tight. I don't think this looks too shabby at all. I mean, this will work. The searwood is preheated to 225 degrees. Let's get this big skewer of meat in this pit. Here's a pro tip. Always put your spit in the pit before you have any meat on it so you can kind of see how close you're gonna be. I mean, this is pretty much dead on in the center, and all I had to do is just kind of prep those back claws before I actually got it in the pit. I am going to be using my ThermalWorks RFXs today because it's a good time to do it on a rotisserie, and also they're really accurate and we're gonna use them. The tricky part is to hit the center without getting into that rod. Now these are just going to give us kind of an idea as we're running this because nobody likes an overdone prime rib. And I want to get one kind of right in the center part. Turn her on and let her spin. Now I typically figure about 30 to 45 minutes per pound, but I'm not trying to get this in a deadline, so we'll see how long it takes to rotisserie this prime rib at the end. Because from my experience in the past, it does seem to cook a tad quicker when you're doing it rotisserie style. My RFX probes are reading pretty dang spot on. We've got 46.9, 46.0 and 46.6. Just hopefully it stays that way till the end. I've got one of the RFX reading close to 90 degrees. It's time to get some garlic and butter sauce melted up. Get my rack in. And what I'm using is 2 sticks of unsalted butter and 2 tablespoons of chopped garlic. That's gonna go right on this edge. If it's gonna make it, we gotta watch before you close it. Yeah, it's gonna fit. Whenever my probes start reading right around 100 degrees, I like to double check it with a good hand thermometer. I have one RFX that is reading 103 and the other 2 are right around 98. It certainly is getting some really nice color though. Look at that. Woo. You're never gonna be disappointed with the searwood when it comes to smoke. The one thing about a rotisserie compared to a standard pellet grill is that when I'm cooking prime rib, I'm always rotating 90 degrees, so it gets pretty even throughout that whole roast. Well, we're kind of stuck. The only way we could rotate it 180 is if I wanted to take it off the spit. I ain't happening. 103, so it's pretty close to what that one probe says. We got about 100, so that's really close to the 98-ish. Now it's time for our garlic butter sauce. Add it on, but be careful here because of 2 reasons. Number one, you don't want to flop it everywhere. The other reason is that you want to turn this pit up at the very end to kind of make a crust. So when putting the butter on, you don't want to spill it all over inside because when you crank this up, you're going to get some of that butter starting to burn in the pit and your smoke gets pretty nasty. Time to give it another coat, but I also want to double check my temperatures. My RFXs are reading right around 115 to 110. I just have that one that's running a little bit warmer. The reason why I like to double check these temperatures is that I did have one of these wireless probes fail on me one time when I was actually doing a prime rib. A very expensive prime rib, so I'm never gonna let that happen again. Yeah, it's about 109, 108. The smaller end, 117 on this part. Turn it back on in butter bath. Really like how this color's turning out though. We are done with our butter bath so we can pull this out of the pit. Now you could put a pan underneath this and catch some of the drippings, but I didn't have a shallow enough pan to fit underneath it today, so we're just gonna let those drippings burn up in the pit. All right, we're gonna do one more check before our next step. We've got 121 on this side, and in the center, yeah, 116-ish. So let's go into the fun part, and we're gonna add just a tad darker sear to the outside of that crust. It's not looking bad. It's just we want it a little darker, and we're going to crank this up to 600 degrees. So this can be fun, but it can also be a tad dangerous. So really pay attention to this pit. If you really see a bunch of white bellowing smoke, back it down, because you might have some type of grease fire. So I suggest before you do a prime rib and add any garlic butter sauce to it, you give this pit a nice deep cleaning. Now, if I wasn't using the rotisserie, I would actually take that prime rib out and then put it on a cutting board and wrap it with foil while this pit was preheating. But for today, we're just gonna roll the dice and see how this one turns out. Here's our beautiful flame. We're just doing this just for a little bit here. Now it's already starting to bubble, and that's a beautiful thing. And yeah, it's getting really smoky in here. Time for a little precautionary check. Ooh, she's looking beautiful now. 123, 122. All right, close it up. We are going to back this back down. We got some really good char on it. Now, it's trying to come down. When you do this, it's gonna get pretty hot. If you're brand new at grilling and barbecue, I would suggest you probably only crank it up to like 400 degrees. But again, make sure that all your ash and grease is cleaned out of the bottom and inside the chamber before you start putting any butter sauce on anything, because you are going to get the flare-ups. And you saw, I got some flare-ups. But overall, didn't do too bad. Got a little crusty right here. Some of that fat. Let's stop it right here. Yep, this end's gonna be a medium. Center is gonna end up turning out to be a medium rare. And this outside, that's gonna be a medium too. Grab some gloves because this spit's gonna be hot. Get that off. Rip off some good old aluminum foil. We'll tent this up, and I'm gonna let it rest for at least 20 minutes. Maybe half an hour. Oh, we can shut our pit off too. Okay, there's 25 minutes of rest. It only took 3.5 hours to cook this prime rib rotisserie style on the Weber Searwood. And the RFX probes, one of them was at 138, which was this side here, and the other two raised up to 131 and 133. Now this one right here could be maybe positioned incorrectly too. Start with that. Pull out our spit, pull out our probes, cut off our professional looking truss. You don't want to give a guest a bunch of twine. So what did we learn today? Well, number one, make sure that your searwood is really cleaned out. Number two, when you're putting on this sear, I wouldn't crank it up to 600. 400 degrees for like 10 minutes should be ample time enough to be able to get a good sear. I mean, every cook is gonna be a little different, and this is only the second time that I've done a rotisserie prime rib on a pellet grill. Now, I've done it on a Santa Maria several times, but that's gonna react a lot different compared to a closed chamber pellet grill. You can see we got some good juice off in this. Okay, stop talking. Let's see what we got. Oh boy. Yummy. Not too gray around the edges. Now that's a good thing, because a lot of times when you're searing a prime rib on a pellet grill, it is kind of easy to start graying up the edges because you're trying to get that really nice dark sear. I got a nice dark sear, and we're not too gray. Let's go ahead, lop off a chunk. Whew. She's tender. Really tender. The taste test has to come from the spinalis itself. Absolutely spot on. Very tender, juicy, and I'm gonna tell you, salt, pepper, garlic, and then that garlic and butter sauce. Crust is so good. I have another one. I don't know what it's gonna look like on film, but it's pink. Very nice and pink. Obviously, there's gonna be more information in the description below about the Weber Searwood or even how to make your very own prime rib. But I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.